Once upon a time, in a certain country, a baby girl was born to a king and queen, and a celebration was held immediately. The witches were also invited to the celebration. But there were 13 witches in the country. But there were only 12 special gold plates for witches, so 12 witches were invited. The witches gave gifts to the baby. The first witch gave a kind heart, the second witch gave beauty, and so on. But just as the 11th witch was giving her a gift, the 13th witch, who had not been invited to the celebration, suddenly appeared and said to the baby, "This child will be stabbed by a spindle and die when she is 15 years old." With that, she quickly left the room. A spindle is a tool used to spin thread. Then the 12th witch, who had not yet given a gift, came out. This witch was unable to remove the 13th witch's curse. But she said the following: "No, this child will not die. He will simply sleep for 100 years." The king immediately gave the order to burn all the spindles in the kingdom. Then the princess grew up quickly and turned 15. One day, the princess climbed the castle tower by herself, and at the back of the tower, an old woman was using a spindle to spin thread. "Grandmother, what is that?" The princess had never seen a spindle before. The old woman answered with a grin, "This is a spindle." When the princess reached out her hand, the spindle pricked her finger, and the princess fell into a deep sleep. Then the princess was not the only one who fell asleep. The king, the queen, the servants, the dogs, the pigeons, and the fire in the hearth all fell asleep. Soon, the castle was completely covered with thorns. Then people called the princess Sleeping Beauty. Many people went to the castle hoping to wake the Sleeping Beauty. But they were caught by the thorns and no one could get close to her. Exactly 100 years passed. And the thorns in the castle still bloomed beautifully. One day, a prince came to visit the Sleeping Beauty. As the prince walked, the thorns unbelievably made a way out of the way. When he entered the castle, the gatekeeper and the cook were asleep, and in the back, the king and queen were asleep, and not a sound could be heard. The thorns in the castle were blooming beautifully. And one day, a prince came to visit the Sleeping Beauty. As the prince walked, the thorns unbelievably made a way out of the way. When he entered the castle, the gatekeeper and the cook were asleep, and in the back, the king and queen were asleep, and not a sound could be heard. The prince walked on until he finally reached the room where the Sleeping Beauty was sleeping. The prince looked at the princess's face and murmured, "What a beautiful princess." He then gently kissed Sleeping Beauty on the cheek, and she woke up. She then looked up at the prince gently. As Sleeping Beauty and the prince came out of the room hand in hand, the king and queen woke up, and then everyone in the castle woke up. The castle suddenly became lively. Eventually, Sleeping Beauty and the prince got married. And the two lived happily ever after.